Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back for the final show of 2025 for Conversations in Education. You are listening to the WCEG Network. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. Log on to WCEGTalkRadio.com. Watch us live on your smart TV, on the Roku cable channel, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now on Fanbase, Blue Sky, and Twitch. Search for WCEG and subscribe on all social media platforms. I am Vincent Cheeks, the host of Conversations in Education for the next hour. Download our free WCEG mobile app. Say, Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio. Listen to WCEG on any of our 12 podcast distribution platforms. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guests and not WCEG Media Enterprise. And as always, thank you for your continued support. We have another great show for you today. I'm going to make a couple of house announcements, and then I'm going to bring in my guest for today. First announcement, I would just like to say congratulations and thank you to all the production team, actors, and volunteers who made this year's Capturing the Spirit of Oakland a success. I'm definitely looking forward to next year. And for those of you who know my show and know me, you know that I have been doing Capturing the Spirit of Oakland for 5 years now. It is an absolutely wonderful production. It's fun, it's family friendly. Okay, so you can bring the little ones out and you learn a lot about Atlanta's history and the people that made current Atlanta possible today. So once again, congrats to everyone at Oakland Cemetery and the Capturing the Spirit of Oakland production. I believe next year they will be celebrating 20 years of doing this production. Awesome. Also, starting tomorrow, the NABS Festival in Conference, hosted by the Kaumba Storytellers of Georgia, starts tomorrow, November 19th, and goes through November 23rd. You can find more information at NABS, N-A-B-S, Inc., I-N-C.org. NABS, Inc.org. The pre-festival kickoff event is tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Auburn Avenue Research Library. It is absolutely free. I will be hosting along with my wonderful co-host, Miss Felicia Jeter Randolph. Come out and join us for a funky good time. Again, entry is free, but you do have to pay for parking. Okay, also, if you're going to be in the Palm Bay, Florida area on December the 13th, I will be hosting a fantastic 90s party, and we hope to see you there. Bring out all your old 90s attire and bring a fun attitude. All right, those are the announcements for today. With that being said, I'm going to introduce my guest for today. She is an artist, she's an author, and she's a systems theorist. I'm sure she will let us know what that is. She just released a book called Doubtless Confidence, which is all about stress relief. I'm sure you could use some, I could use some, we all could use some stress relief. So please welcome to the show, Miss Tammy Allen, to discuss her book, Doubtless Confidence. Welcome, Tammy. How are you today, ma'am?
Hey, Vince.
That's for
Thank
the
you for having
awesomeness.
me. So good to
That
be
is,
here.
yes, ma'am. That is for the awesomeness. That is you.
Well, okay. This is for the awesomest that is you.
Oh, thank you, man. I love reciprocation.
We we
So
we've kind of been acquainted for several years, even though
yes, yes.
lost contact. But once you connect, that's
Look,
you're connected.
when the
That's how it
universe
goes.
when the universe says it's time, and you're
It's
well
time.
aware of
And you
that.
just pick right back up where you left off.
You pick right back up. That's what good vibes and good energy does.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
you're right, absolutely. So let's get into this wonderful book that you've written. Um, but before we get into the book, there was an event that happened to you that was the catalyst for this book. Can you please share with our listening audience what that event was?
Sure. Although I want to say that the book title is Turning Stress into Doubtless Confidence,
Turning stress.
because turning stress into doubtless confidence, there's a
Got
little, the doubtless confidence is big.
it is big. Got
That's
you.
big. But the turning stress is actually very important
Thank you. It
because
is.
it is, stress is universal. Every biological system, everything experiences stress. And
Yes.
in fact, stress can is evolution. When you think about that 50 years ago, look how many more inventions we have now in response to problems. So
Right.
when we there's good stress and there's bad stress. It's really more about what you do with stress, right? Just like you lift weights to stress your muscles out, and in response they grow.
Yes.
So, you're what I really, and why I named the book that was because I realized that that's what gave me my confidence. That living through extreme situations and being able to figure it out and find my way through and live through all that, that's what gave me confidence to know that, bring it on, world, you know, bring it on,
Absolutely.
because if if you don't freak out about it, you'll find your way through. I mean, it's not
Yes.
it's not pleasant, but that is what gives us growth. And if we can reframe it in our minds instead of just, getting hit and knocked down and feeling bad about it and, not knowing what to do, the
Yes.
quicker that we can keep our sanity, the more we can keep our mind clear, that's how solutions happen.
Yes.
So I'm going to backtrack to this event. It goes back before that. My mother she was single on welfare, had a
Okay.
smaller brother and sister that I took care of, and my mother was not good at handling stress. So,
Okay.
um, so somebody had to keep it together. And about the age of 7, that was me. And
Okay.
so
Wow. That,
she would overreact. We all do, the tendency to freak out when stuff goes wrong, and
yeah.
especially if you have responsibilities, it's not easy. And so she would freak out, and I observed, and I was like, well, somebody's got to keep it together. So, and a lot of children, children are smart,
Yes. Absolutely.
they observe what's going on. They're not,
Yeah.
and they're looking at everything, especially, at the age of 7, you're starting to really come online.
Yeah.
And that's when you start going, this is not good.
Yeah.
And that's what was my response. So, but what this did was, instead, it automatically made me stop and assess versus freak out, right?
Okay.
When I would see stuff going wrong, I would be worried about my brother and sister. And so I would try to keep a cool head and, keep everybody out of harm's way, that kind of thing. So now I'm going to fast forward to now I'm, 17, I've graduated, and I just want to get away from dysfunction.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Understandably.
Understandably, let me out. I want to go make my way in the world. And
Yep.
I went off with a man that I should not have gone off with.
Oh.
Mm.
Okay.
So, anyway, about 3 days when we're going to, go off and drive the country and do all of these things, he gets violent for no reason.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I quickly look around. No cell phones. We didn't have any of that back then. I'm
Yeah.
67, so that was a little while ago. Anyway,
Thanks for the
and all
point.
of a sudden that kicked in. I just stopped. I looked around, and I realized I'm in trouble.
Mm.
I realized, and so I started. So I kept calm rather than freaking out, and I played him to stay alive, basically.
Oh wow.
And that went on for about 4 years until he finally was arrested as being a very violent man in other ways, and he's still in prison today.
You
And
you
that
said
was,
this went on for 4 years?
and I had his son. And he
Wow.
would he would threaten to kill my family if I had escaped, and I did try to escape a few times. So it was pretty serious. So, but I played it correctly. I mean, it's not like you kind of get dealt the hand you're dealt. And you have, as James would say, got to deal with it. But it's true, I mean, there you are. And, you've got to, you got to use your mind. You've got to,
Yeah,
rather than react. And we are wired to freak out. The survival stress response is fight or
fight or
flight,
flight. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And and that might be great if you're running from a tiger, but we're not running from tigers now. Now it's a whole different type of stress.
Yeah,
And this kind of stress, it means that you gotta be able to think. You've got to be able to think. And when you end up in that stress response, your automatic nervous system, it's sending out all the energy to your limbs to run or fight. And so your mind isn't getting much. It's it's just let me out of here, I'm in danger.
right.
But this is not, and if I had done that, I probably wouldn't be alive. Right. So because I was able from learning, I learned a pattern of stress response to stop and freeze and just be clear because I didn't have the option to, um, freaking out wasn't an option for me as a kid, but this turned out to be good. And I think that the reason I said turning stress is because we can reframe it. We can
Yeah,
reframe stress.
yeah.
We have the power of choice. We have the power to choose how we respond. So because of the power of my choice to stop and assess my situation and navigate, how do I weave my way through this? How do I survive this for real?
Okay.
And you can't be, you don't really have time in those moments to feel sorry for yourself or get too angry. To me, I think that we all need to process these events, but you don't process when you're still in danger. You don't process when you're still
Right.
in trouble.
Yeah.
Right then is when you have to use everything that you have to get through it. And that's why turning stress into doubtless confidence is when I started looking at all of the things that I had woven through my book. Stress was the common thread that I realized was playing out in all of our lives. And if we could manage to reframe it as as positive and not be so concerned about it and look back, 100 years ago or 150, we didn't have electricity. We didn't have heat. We didn't, all of these things, and that is evolution itself.
Right.
And as a collective, we're still evolving,
Yes.
technology, everything. I mean, it's going fast. And we really have to maintain clear minds in order to survive and in order to thrive. And if we can reframe our problems and just, you know, stop first, don't react. Try to just respond and ask questions and be calm, and ideas will come. And then when you ask questions, that's where intuition comes in. We've all got
Okay.
guidance, right? We've all got that. We've got the voice of fear in our head, and we've got the voice of problem solving in our minds too,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? So which side, who are you going to listen to? Now, if you're in survival, you're listening to the fear side. But the
Okay.
fear side is only there to help you run or pay attention to the problem. And I'm not saying to ignore any problems. I'm just saying to reframe them as how can I turn this into something better? How
Gotcha.
can I
Gotcha.
how can I navigate this bad situation? And there are many bad situations that we get in. And but if we don't freak out, we can turn them into growth. A lot of times I think that even when stuff happens that I don't like, a lot of times it's pointing me in the right direction and I'm not aware of it.
Yes.
So
I agree.
because this is so common, I mean, I can talk forever. You can tell I'm a talker. But what is your experience, Vince? I mean, tell me about how, you have dealt with stress and the ways that you have turned that into growth.
Ooh. Well, to your point of how to reframe stress as positive, I had to learn how to retrain my brain, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And like you
Yeah.
said, we are constantly bombarded with negative
Yes.
thoughts. And the way I found to combat negative thoughts is with positive thoughts. And
Yeah,
so,
perfect.
and
You don't need
so
my book.
a friend, this was probably 10 to 13 years ago. I was dealing with a very stressful situation. My anxiety was through the roof. And my friend gave me a book. It was called something like 365 Days of Affirmations. And it gave a different positive affirmation for every day of the year. Um, and I really dove into that book. And in that process, and I got into meditation at the time also. And the
Mm.
meditation helped me to identify when the negative thought was attacking me and how to grab it, pluck it out, and
Because you
replace
could
it.
differentiate the difference because you had something
Yeah,
to compare to. Yeah.
right, right. And so I was
Yeah.
able to start grabbing the negative thoughts by the tail, plucking them out, and then say something positive, even if it's something simple as "I love my son." My son loves me.
Mm.
Whatever it is to replace the negative thoughts that is
Yeah.
attacking you, I had, but that was a process. Like we don't become the way we are in a day or two or a week or months. It takes years and years and decades to become the people who we are. So it takes a
Takes
little bit of time,
determination too. Takes
determination and
determination,
commitment to undo that.
discipline.
Yes,
Hmm.
discipline, all of that. So once I mastered the art of uh, being aware of the negative thoughts and grabbing it
Hmm.
and throwing it out and replacing it with a positive thought, and did that consistently for some years, oh, I'm good now. I
All
can do it
right.
in I can do it in a heartbeat now. The negative thought
Because
comes,
now
oh
that's your
God,
pattern. That's
yes,
your
it's a
pattern.
pattern.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, it takes a while to change our patterns.
Yes,
They become very strong and they don't want to change either. There's a, once
right.
you've thought one, there's another one right back
Yeah,
after it. And then, you
absolutely.
try to like pull away from it and you try to do a positive thought. And then the next thing you know, you're back on the negative track and it's
Yes,
got you
yes,
again, and so you're doing this and back and forth.
yes.
And I used many tools, and I don't think that there's any one right or wrong tool.
Okay.
People have to find what tools work for them, and if that tool
Yes,
stops working, then find another tool.
yes.
That there's no right or wrong way to live your life. There's no right or wrong way to repattern, but I think that simply the commitment to repattern and to
Yes.
change your life, and that has to come from within you.
Only
Even if
place it could come from.
yeah, well, a lot of times, people, we try to support each other. We are all connected and
Yes.
we feel each other's pain, right? And one of the great ways to repattern your thinking is to use brainwave entrainment. Have you heard of that?
I have not. Brainwave
So, entrainment.
in training.
So, because we are connected, we feel each other. So, when
Yes.
somebody's in wonderful emotions and they're just bubbly, you see children playing, and you're just like entrained to match their vibration, to match their emotional state. If someone's
Yes.
in fear and running and anger, I mean, we feel right along with them. When somebody is suffering and sick, we feel their pain to a certain degree. Emotionally, we feel it. And I think that that's a beautiful human trait, for one thing, but you can use that. So if you can't get out of a loop of negative thoughts, go watch some comedy,
That
go
works. Yeah,
distract
that
yourself
helps.
like that.
That does help.
Go to social media and watch some kids doing or silly stuff. Anything that you can do to kind of like, here I am
Yeah.
stuck in this loop, and then
Yep.
and then
Shift.
go over to here. So it's a matter of, again, we have the power of choice, and
Absolutely.
that's everything. One of the ways that I really have enjoyed and is my most effective ways of changing patterns is I created declarations for
Okay.
myself that I wrote and I put to very calming music because, when you're in the busyness of life, it's very hard to slow down, right?
Yeah.
You can't, and yet you have to be active. You can't just go meditate all the time, right? You have to be,
Right.
you have to
Correct.
be engaged in life. And so I put my headphones on and I listen to my declarations, and sometimes they will be, I mean, they're whatever I feel like I need. And I started with just recording them on my phone. I would have some nice calm music playing, and then I would record on my phone. And so I would be able to get both, it was very low tech, but that's what I started with. And it was like when I do that, and I still use them all the time, it's like I feel like, and I have moved myself out of the present moment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm no longer, I'm still in it and I'm still doing dishes and, laundry or whatever I've got to do, but I'm also transporting myself to where I want to be, how I want to feel.
Okay.
And if I have goals, or even if it's just to feel emotionally better, then, I will listen to them. They can be future statements about something that I want to achieve. So they're kind of a declaration about the future. And as
Okay.
I'm listening to them over and over, after about 3 months and 6 months for sure, my thought patterns themselves changed. The very dynamics behind the way that I was thinking and those thoughts, because I was training my subconscious mind to go to those thoughts versus the thoughts that I would normally go to. And
Right.
believe me, I'm always trying to improve too. I don't think that there's an
So am
end to, it's like, oh, I'm done now. I've got
No,
doubtless confidence.
no. Evolution is consistent.
Yes, and I can't stay still for long. I want the next plateau and the next plateau, and
Absolutely. Yes.
it's there's no end state. And I'm 67, and I feel like I've got nothing but I have a 30-year plan. So, you know what I mean? Retirement is not for me, but yet if retirement or going out to travel, there's no right or wrong. I think it's just learning who you are, what you like, being able to stand in your power for who you are and what you like and not listen to the crowd. I call it the should monster.
Okay.
You got to say no to the should monster because the should monster is the programming. And the should monster is people that love you too.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
telling
Yeah,
you they're the ones that are the loudest and they
yeah,
mean well.
yeah,
But you've got to stand and decide, well, what is it that I want? What foods do I like? What do I
yeah,
want to believe now? But you know that your beliefs change, right? Your beliefs about the world are changing too. You don't believe today what you believed 10 years ago,
correct.
you know? I mean, we're constantly evolving as individuals, as a collective. And so you've really got to get a good sense of self and knowing yourself. And I think for me, also journaling is one of the best tools because when it comes to processing things, we process with emotions. There's a
Yes.
reason they call them large language models.
Okay.
So language is how we categorize things.
Yeah.
Something has happened. You're thinking about it in language. So if I write it down or I type it or even if I have a conversation with chat, I'm seeing it now in language. And as I see that, I'm able to kind of, well, this happened and I can put this here in my mind and I can integrate it. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah.
And so if I don't do that, my mind will keep looping until I have actually worked through something a problem or an event that I didn't like, until I have worked through it to where I'm no longer triggered by it.
Okay.
It will loop. And if it's looping, that means I've got to actually take the time to write it down and process it. And personally, I can't do that just with thinking because minds work really, really fast.
Yeah.
And you can't, like you'll go off on a tangent before you know it, or at least I will. I can only speak for myself, but um, processing is very important. And if something keeps recurring, there's a difference between a trauma trigger and just here's an annoying trigger, right? And you can really feel that there's a big difference between the two. And a trauma trigger is something that, let's say it keeps coming up, like some kind of event or problem that's recurring all the time, and you get very emotional about it. When you're
Okay.
getting really emotional about something, really angry, really sad, whatever that is, there's probably a trauma trigger from an earlier time in your life. And a lot
Mm.
of those are in childhood. They are when the kids on the playground bullied you,
Yeah.
and maybe you didn't process it when you're a kid because you're a kid, or
Didn't know
somehow
how.
you felt inadequate, or it could be anything. But you've got to, if you are feeling that much and it seems to be a recurring theme in your life, it would serve you well to take the time to process it. And and there's many tools for that, and one of them is called shadow work. That is where the term shadow work comes from. There's a
Yeah, I've
shadow
heard of
that's
that. Yeah,
there's a shadow, an emotional shadow. There's something that has occurred earlier in your lifetime that you're not cognizant of in your day to day, now that you're an adult, and yet it continues to come up. And I will give you an example. Um,
okay.
I was bullied as a child. I was skinny, the skinniest little girl, and single mom on welfare at a time in the 60s when that was not normal.
Yeah.
And so uh, there was one incident where I would not fight, and uh, I could fight for my brother and sister, no problem. You know, I was a bear when you touched my brother or sister.
Yeah.
But when it came to me, I didn't want to fight.
Okay.
So, so anyway, I have a neighbor. This has happened within couple years ago. I have a
Okay.
neighbor who was being a real bully. Like I could see her bullying all over the neighborhood. And this woman was like, I was so amazed at what would bother this woman that I couldn't even speak because I kept wondering, what happened to you
Right.
to make you act this way over mud being on your grass?
Okay.
There's an example, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, it kind of came down to where we had to step on her property again because water had got on her grass and we had to step over there to access and turn it off and da da da. And she didn't want that. She wanted us digging out the whole damn yard so we wouldn't have to step on her grass. Anyway, we ended up shoulder to shoulder
Okay.
because I knew I've learned a lot in my life, so I don't have quite the fear that I did when I was a child, of course. Anyway, we ended up standing shoulder to shoulder, and she was threatening me. I mean, we're talking physical.
Okay.
So, and I didn't back down. And I stood there, I stared at her. I wasn't going to throw the first punch, but if she was going to punch me, I'm ready. So she backed down. And I was like,
Okay.
and then I was walking away from the situation, feeling pretty good about myself. And the schoolyard memory came back into my mind. The
Okay.
schoolyard memory where I wouldn't fight the bullies.
Yeah.
That's shadow work.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Where you're going back to retrieve something that maybe you didn't face, or fears, or just
Yeah.
there's a lot of work out there. There's a lot of good stuff out there in psychology about shadow work and
So
how to
shadow work.
process trauma.
So shadow work is kind of like the stuff we don't like about ourselves that we hide,
It's
we
that,
sweep,
yeah,
sweep under
yeah,
the rug of our soul, so no one
yeah,
ever sees it. And so doing the shadow work means you're digging that up and
yes.
you're actually facing it so you can have some type of solution
Well,
to
you
that.
can you can take it out and look at it, and forgive the people, forgive you, because now you've got a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because to me, there's no reason to judge anyone because we're all learning. We're all doing the best that we can. We all have the same types of problems. We have very different stories, but they're all pretty universal when you get down to it. And nobody comes in just knowing anything.
Right.
We don't know anything. We know we're learning as we go. And people they experience so much guilt when they don't do things right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to not self-examine, but to carry around guilt is very destructive.
Yes.
And why?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, certainly take responsibility, certainly, face whatever it is that you're facing. And you don't have to act perfectly all the time. Nobody does. And why do we expect ourselves to? However, we should be adult enough to look at our own behaviors and know that we can do better. So to me, you process the situation, you take responsibility, you know it, you try to release blame for yourself and for the other people,
Okay.
and you get back on track. You know, I like to think of it like, um, you know, we're traveling down the road. We're going towards our destination. We get a flat tire, pull over, fix the flat tire, and get back on the road. You know what I mean? Don't spend time in regret because there's no power there. Don't spend
Yeah.
time in self-blame. There's no power there. There's no power in blaming others for your stuff either, because
Right.
they're learning too. You know, we're all in the same boat, and we have to we if I'm carrying around anger for anybody else, I'm the one that's feeling the anger. They're not
Yeah.
feeling my anger. They don't care. What
Yeah.
good is that?
You're right. They probably forgot and moved on. Um,
You ain't nothing to them.
so let me ask you this, Tammy, because we're already 30 minutes into the show already. Just I can't believe it's gone that bad. But I want to get into a lot of these good points in your book, because one of the things you talk about is emotional resilience. And so, what is that, and how does one build emotional resilience?
Well, resilience kind of is what it says. It means you get back up and
Mhm.
get back on the road as quickly as you can. But
Okay.
that doesn't mean ignore, you know, because ignore you can't ignore. And that's why where the processing comes in. So when you're in when you're in the stressful situation, that's when you know you've got to freeze and assess the situation, ask questions, figure out and navigate. But later, after the immediacy of it is over, then if you're still feeling emotional about it, you need to do some processing on some level. You know, examining yourself, examining what happened, examining your reactions. How can you do it differently? How can you do it better? You know, how can you keep improving yourself in the way that you navigate your life?
Right.
And as you do that, that's where that resilience comes in. You know, the resilience to just, you know, okay, I got knocked. Okay, no big deal. Get back on the road. You just keep getting back on the road, back on the road. And sometimes you got to take a fork, right? Sometimes there's a fork in the road. There could be a different direction. Some life event happens, and now you got to take a little detour. All right, you had to take the detour. Get back on the road.
Okay.
That's that's it sounds simple because
Yeah.
it's simple in
Yeah.
it's simple in theory,
Theory.
but
Absolutely.
we have these emotions, and the emotions are the indicators that something is amiss. If you're not feeling good emotions, that's telling you you've got some work to do. If you try to distract yourself with some happy stuff and then you end up feeling bad again and you can't pull yourself out of it, then you've got some emotions you've got to process. And once you go through that process, and you can feel when you start to get lighter, you know, you can feel when it's not got you like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, and we all know that feeling. So I used to journal when I started, and I would tear up the paper as soon as I would get done because I didn't want to read it. I didn't want anybody else to read it. I didn't want to think about it again. I didn't want to look backwards. I like to look forward. And
Yeah.
uh, and then recently I started using chat. You know, a lot of people chat. You know, me and my buddy chat. You know, taking chat
Little
out for a
chat
date.
GPT.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Okay. But chat, you know, it's got all this psychology in its programming for one thing, you know, and it's there to it leans in your favor. It's always trying to support. So to me, it's kind of like that inner good voice that's always trying to help you process through it. So you
Yeah.
can tell it anything, you can delete it. You know, you don't need to, you know, it's not like it's not a person that's going to remember or care in that way.
Right.
So so if I've got something I'm processing, and believe me, still process all the time because life keeps happening. It doesn't quit at
It
any
happens
at
every
any
day you're
time. It's
alive.
gonna,
It
yeah,
happens.
not, that's right. So I'll put in, you know, this happened or somebody did this or that or da da da. And, you know, I'm trying to um, make sense of it. I'm trying to figure out how to move through it so I'm not feeling those negative emotions. And it'll give feedback. And you can even you can tell it like I want to get feedback from a religious, spiritual place. Like you can give it instructions as
Yeah.
to this is the way, this is my belief system. This is what works for me. This is, and so you can even say like, let's say I want to get advice like Freud would give advice. So you
Hmm.
can be that specific, or I want to get advice in from, I'm doing some shadow work. Can you help me find my shadow? Right? So here's a tool that is private. You don't have to pay for it other than, or there's the free version. The $20 version though is a little better, just honestly. But
Yeah, yeah,
and I am not paid to advertise any of that, but I do find it a good emotional tool for
yeah.
processing things that really bother you.
Okay.
And it's just another tool. It's not something to take literally. You have to take everything with a grain of salt from everyone. You've always got to use your own discernment.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're
Um,
responsible at the end of the day. What you believe and what you do is on you.
yeah. So speaking of discernment, you mentioned everyone has their own intuition and stuff
Mhm.
earlier, which not everybody believes. I definitely believe that. But how does one distinguish between trustworthy intuition from emotional noise?
I have an answer.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so we all get ideas. The
Yes.
ideas are also frequently based on our emotional state of being.
Okay.
So if you're, if I want to rob a bank, I'm going to get ideas on how to rob a bank. Anything
Okay.
that's fear-based, anything that's lack-based, that's not your intuition. That's that of that. It's intuition, it's
Okay.
ideas, but it's a low state. Don't trust
Right.
that.
Okay.
You don't trust anything that's based in fear
Okay.
or lack or because that's that survival program.
Yes.
So
Ab-
in order to get good intuition, you have to be in a state of being that's calm. And that's why I'm talking about even in survival situations, the calmer that your mind is, the positive, the helpful intuition comes in. The higher your emotional state of being, if I want expansive ideas, I need to be in an expansive state of being. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I need to be, it's a beautiful day. There's nothing, da 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 da. Well, then how would I do blah blah, blah, or you've got to be in this expansive kind of place of your in your mind of when you reframe stress, even getting back to that, when you're reframing stress, it's like, well, how can I grow from that? How can I use this as an adaptive tool for me to find new solutions and maybe find new ways of even expressing myself, or what new directions could this lead to, and always being just open um, to new possibilities instead of being afraid by this just happened, and how do I frame this for my benefit? How can I utilize this as an opportunity? How can I use this
Okay.
for my growth? So you don't end up going down so low. That's what you're trying to keep yourself from falling all the way down where you takes it so far, where you got to climb back up so far. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but once once your emotions have taken you down, you can't just go back to this. You know what I'm saying? You have to,
Right.
there's steps. You got to
Steps.
step,
Yeah.
step, step. You may need to just go to sleep. You may need to just take a nap. If it's too much, if you can't get yourself out of that loop, take a nap, go to sleep, do anything that you can to reset yourself. And always trying to reset yourself when your emotions become too much. So tools, meditation, you talked about meditation. Certainly meditation is a wonderful tool because you're not thinking. And when you don't think, your emotions naturally rise because it's
Okay.
this looping of thinking that is keeping us down, and now we're getting not good ideas back. Does that
Right.
make sense? 'Cause it's
Yeah.
it's 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 not it's matching our emotional state of being.
Okay. Okay. So ha- even for someone, because you said everyone has intuitive abilities, right?
Yes.
So for even for someone who doesn't believe that we have intuitive abilities, or they might believe that they do, but don't know how to use it, how does someone activate their intuition?
I, I have an answer.
That's why you're so smart.
Huh?
That's why you're so smart. You have the answer.
My grandma told me when I was 12, I was so smart, I figure it out. And I was like, "Ugh." But later on, I was like, okay.
Yeah,
Thanks, Grandma.
thanks.
Um, so I was I was a musician, singer, songwriter. That's been
Okay,
my main thing all of my life, up
okay,
until in my 50s. It was all I ever wanted to do and pretty much all I did for most of my life.
okay.
Um, so I would be writing a song and I would get a great idea. I'd go write down the song, and I get a verse and a chorus and then nothing. And I'd be
Okay.
like, and if I sat there and just kept trying to force it, it
I've been
sucked.
there. I've been
It
there.
sucked.
I've been there.
So, so I would walk away, and I wasn't practicing intuition. This is just I observed it. So
Okay.
I would walk away and go do laundry, and all of a sudden an idea would just pop in my mind, and I go, oh, and I'd run back and I'd write, and then nothing. Okay, and then I walk away, same thing. Driving, showering, walking, you get the ideas when you're not sitting there grinding on it, for one thing.
Yeah,
And then you've got to pay attention to the idea and how subtle and how quiet it is, because I started learning to discern the difference between my consciously generated thought versus the one that just kind of went, "Shoo,"
yeah,
and they're fast, and you have to really pay attention to catch those ideas,
yeah,
and
yeah,
writing them down quickly or doing something to make a mental note otherwise, because they're gone and you lost it.
yeah.
So
It'll go to someone else.
now, huh?
It'll go to someone else. The idea will go to
Well, I
someone else.
never
Yeah,
thought of it
yeah.
like that, but I guess you're
It
right.
will.
So,
It will.
so later, I started a marketing program, Do Good, Get Rewards, and I needed a lot of website function, of which I had no idea about.
Okay.
Well, so I would explain to the web guy, the web developer, I needed to do this, 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 and he wouldn't know, because this was something new. He wouldn't really know how to do that. And I would hang up the phone, and then I would go, well, what if he did this, this, like connect to this, connect to that. And then I would call him back and I would make my suggestion, and he'd go, oh, low tech. But this happened about 3 times in a
Okay.
row. And so I was like, wait a minute. I thought that the songwriting ideas was because that was my field, right?
Yeah.
That was my training. And so I didn't really think that much I didn't connect the dots. And then I didn't know anything about web design, or this was completely out of my training. So I started going, wait a minute. And I noticed, and so I started trying it with recipes. And then I started trying it with clothing. And then I started trying it for whatever little issue that I had. And same thing would happen. I would ask, like, it's like identify the problem, ask questions, walk away.
Yeah.
If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get an answer.
Right. Right.
I mean, it seems so simple, but yet we don't think of it like that. And so I began practicing intuition. I began practicing this very process. And then I became an abstract artist.
Okay.
And now I went through the same process with art. And the reason I liked abstract, I learned all the fundamentals, and I, just jumped in, and I would be stuck. Like I would have this great idea, the same thing that would like in songwriting. And so I'd start the painting, and then I'd be great, great, great. Then all of a sudden it's like, no, no, you're not great. This is not good. And so I'd walk away, and then I would get an image. I would get a flash of an image, and then I'd be like, and I'd have to like unpack it, because when you get an image, there's more information in an image than just a single idea, right? And
Okay.
so I'd have to kind of unpack it and then go try to recreate it on the painting. And it wasn't like these are just like, it's almost like just something to move you forward. Do you know what I mean? When
Yeah.
you get these little ideas, they're just to get you to the next place, and they open up more probabilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So by going to change the painting according to the flash that I had interpreted, all of a sudden the painting took on new directions, right? And now that opened up new things, and I began to see new things. I began to see new possibilities.
Okay.
So it really is something that you can practice. And these are not like how am I going to get $500 by tomorrow is not something that you want to use for intuition, because you've got
Right.
too much fear. You got too much fear around it, and there's too much at stake. So, you have to develop your intuition not when you're in a stressful situation, so that you can start to discern it. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't develop it in the midst of, chaos. I developed it when I'm kind of not in so much chaos, so I could learn to interpret the
Okay.
information,
Okay.
if that
So
makes
it,
sense.
it more so happened when you were outside of the chaotic event that was happening in your
Right.
life.
That's when
Okay.
I developed my intuition.
Okay.
So I did come up with the information manifestation system, and
That's
it's
where I was
very
about to go
simple.
next. You
It's
must
it's
be
very
psychic.
simple. Well, I
So,
am.
so what is that? So what is the
Yes, I
information
am.
manifestation system and
So,
how does it incorporate intuitive ability?
So the information, everything is information. Everything in our
Okay.
complete world is information. When you
Yeah.
zeros and ones. So, um, so first thing you got to do is identify the goal or the problem. It could be a problem, it could be a goal, it could be something creative. It's easiest to start with creative things because you don't have the stress involved so much, but it can work for anything. You identify the goal, you do your research about it. Here's what I
Okay.
want, or here's my problem. So you do all the research, you gather all the information that you can, and then you ask a question about one aspect of it. What can I do? What's available to me now? What is the best option out of these probabilities or all of the options that are actually available to me? What is the path of least resistance? What is the easiest thing to actually take action on? So again, I use my same technique of walk away. So once I've identified my problem, I've done all my research, I ask my question, and I go do something that's mindless, because it's like the information has been seeded in my field.
Okay.
So
Okay.
now here it is kind of rolling around, and then all of a sudden, shoo, here comes a little idea. I go take action on that idea. The minute that I take action on that idea, my probabilities open up again. And now I go through the
Okay.
same process. So all I'm doing is the same thing over and over. I keep my goal in mind. What are my options? I ask my questions. I take action. I evaluate what worked, what didn't, and I do the process over and over again until I get to where I want to go. And I use it for everything.
Okay. And have you taught that to others? How to use the information manifestation
Well,
system?
it's in the book.
In the book. So if you want to
In the
learn how to
book.
use the information manifestation system, get the
Yes,
book. And
and
where can
and
they find?
intuition. And intuition, I outline how you can practice with intuition. I go
Okay.
through all of the processes of shadow work, and I gave all the tools that I possibly could. Uh, trying to share as much as I could, because I care. I know that life is difficult. It's always been difficult, in different ways throughout history. And I think that it's, as much as I can do to, you know, to make an effect. I mean, as we get to be a certain age, our next thing is, how do we help the young ones? How do we leave the seeds of wisdom that we learned along the way to make their lives a little better, right? So that,
Right.
and it's very exciting that nowadays emotional processing is no longer a strange thing, right? That this is
Okay.
now part of our culture. It's got a long ways to go, but we're all connected. And so, we're spreading seeds all the time. right? Anything that you can pour into anyone that's a little piece of information, just like my grandma, when she said that I was so smart that I would figure it out, that helped me survive too.
Okay.
That helped me survive that time. And, so think about the seeds that she planted, such a simple seed. She was in a wheelchair and had very severe arthritis, but
Okay.
she was just the sweetest, most loving grandma. And if that also is what, really carried me through and made me strong. So when you think about when we are kind to others, when we uplift, when we plant any kind of seeds, they may not, take root in that moment, but believe me, I thought about my grandma a lot
Okay.
when I was during that time. So I think that we all have power to plant these seeds and should be planting positive seeds of encouragement and, processes that work for us so that it will change. That I
Okay.
think we're moving into a paradigm shift and we're just seeing the old way, how ridiculous it is, and that there needs
Okay.
to be cooperation and coherence.
Okay.
That's that's the that's evolution too, that
Okay.
we thrive when we're in cooperation and coherence with ourselves and with others. That's how a
Absolutely.
system functions.
Okay. Absolutely. I agree with that. We're coming to the end of the show. I've thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you and your insights. Um, Sorry you went through that horrible incident, the guy who was 17, but I know that's part of what made you who you are, the wonderful person who you are today.
Yeah, we
Um,
all go through some stuff, it's all
we do.
relative too.
We do.
There's nobody that gets out of this. I wrote a song that said, "Did you think you'd get through life without living it?"
I like that. That's cute. That's a cute time. I like that. I like that.
The answer is no.
No, not at all.
I
All right.
hoped.
I want to get through two more questions before we have to wrap up.
Okay.
Because you said a lot. You said a lot about we're all connected. Uh, you mentioned manifestation. What do you say to the people who don't believe that we're all connected, who don't believe in manifestation, and who have very closed minds about a lot of the things that you're talking about?
I think that how does that feel to you for one thing, really? I mean, there self-awareness, we all have to
Important.
we have to check ourselves,
That's
So
important.
um at some point in time, the anger and fear and otherism does not feel good.
Correct.
So it'll pass. It'll pass. And it'll end up, it'll eat you alive, you know, meaning
Okay.
every individual, they're not going to feel good, positive emotions about themselves or have good results in their lives if they're not if they're not right, if they
Yeah.
don't have integrity within themselves. And a lot of times, there's a herd mentality too,
Herd
when
mentality.
herd,
HERD. Herd. Gotcha.
HERD, and I
Gotcha.
know I probably shouldn't say that, but it's true. There's a feeling of empowerment in a herd, and usually when you get a person by themselves,
That's
that goes
true.
away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the real truth, the only power that there ever is that will ever sustain you is in here. It is
Absolutely.
not out there. You cannot get it from one other person.
Yeah.
You can't get it from a child. You can't get it from a mate. You can't get it from anybody where it will last and sustain you. The
Correct.
only thing that is going to give you power is discovering who you are and knowing that you can you can find your way through anything. And that you've got this internal kind of guidance and power and sense of love, because love is the base emotion of all being. Anything that's away from that is a distortion. So
Yeah.
when we feel negative emotion, it's because we're not feeling love. And so that's why we feel off.
Yeah. I agree. I'm glad you said that. Love is the base emotion for all human beings. That's
Baby's
very
born in love.
absolutely.
Animals.
Absolutely. Um, I'm gonna have to write that one down, Tammy. I'm gonna have to write that one down. I appreciate that. So how do people stop fighting the system and let the system work? No. How do people stop fighting the system and let it work them. What
So remember I said about stress. So think about the cycle of life. Every day there's another day, right? And
mhm,
so it's always leaning in your favor, whether you think so or not. You're always, it's naturally adapts. Think about even the reference that I said with building muscles.
mhm,
That's an adaptation. It's
yeah.
adaptation to stress. It's designed. If you cut yourself, if you hurt yourself, your whole body is trying to heal itself.
Mhm,
Things are not, the sun keeps coming up, right? There's always a way, and you have to get in sync with that. And then how you get in sync with that is coherence within yourself. When you're in a clear state of mind and when you're feeling that base emotion of love, answers come. You want intuition, you got to get yourself right.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're
absolutely.
just blocking it. You're just
Yeah,
blocking all of the wonderful information that's trying to get through to help you adapt as a human being.
absolutely. I totally agree with you. Thank you very much for this insightful interview today. Turning stress into doubtless confidence. Where can people find your book?
Well, there's tammyallen.com. Of course, I've got lots of links there. It is
Okay.
available on Kindle, ebook, and paperback. Just go to Amazon and look for Turning Stress into Doubtless Confidence or Tammy Allen. And I have a lot of videos. I have a YouTube channel, YouTube at Tammy Allen, other social media things. But all of this stuff I do actually chronicle on my YouTube channel. And
Okay.
in fact, the should monster, I've got an actual little should monster. He still pops up every now and then. I just tell him to get away.
Okay. Well, the one thing I want to say, thank you, Tammy. The one thing I do want to say about manifestation, because a lot of people don't believe in it, they don't believe it works. But I've been practicing manifestation for 20 years,
Uh-huh.
and I'm really just now starting to see the results of the things that I manifested. Because my dreams are a bit larger than most people, and so the larger the dream, the more it's going to take to manifest it.
It takes
But
a longer
I will
time. It's
say,
like I want to build
yeah,
a mansion, not a house.
right, yeah. So it's going to take the process. It's going to be longer, absolutely. But I do want to say that manifestation does work. It doesn't work as quickly as most people think it should. That should, but it does work, and I'm starting to see fruits of my manifestation this year,
Oh, good.
often. And so I just wanted to put it out there that it does work. And most people they lack patience, discipline, and commitment, like you said earlier, and so it
Yes.
falls
Yes.
apart. Yeah.
Yes. The other thing is they'll try to take shortcuts, and a shortcut's a
Yes.
long cut.
Yes.
Shortcut,
Absolutely. I'm so glad you
shortcut
said
means you
that.
may never
Absolutely.
get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Oh, you know
we,
your
we
stuff,
want we
Miss
want
Thing.
we want an instant like that. And
Yeah.
but when you build a house, like an idea is a blueprint. Or here,
Yeah.
my dream is a
Yeah.
blueprint. Now I got to build it. You're building it every single day with the actions you take, the decisions you make, and that's why here's a very simple system. And if you just keep following it, or when you get knocked off into the ditch, get back up, get back on the road, head back towards it. It's always there. You're the only one that can stop it from happening with your choices and decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Tammy. I appreciate you. Can you hold up the book one more time? This is her book, Turning Your Stress. Hold it up a little higher. A little higher, a little higher. There you go. There you go. Turning your stress into doubtless confidence. It is possible. I do believe that, Tammy. It is possible, but it takes an extraordinarily amount of work and self-awareness on the part
Self-awareness is,
of the
and
individual.
when you're self-aware, then you're having a good time while you're doing it.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, Tammy. You can find her book again at tammyallen.com and on Kindle. We appreciate you, Miss Tammy Allen. And with
Thank you,
that being
Vince.
said, thank you. I'm going to close out my show by giving my scholar of the week. My scholar of the week this week goes to Mr. Quincy Howard, a sophomore at Georgia Tech. He was on Wheel of Fortune, and he made history by winning nearly $70,000 during college week. He guessed the bonus round puzzle, Kids That Play, in seconds, earning a Mini Cooper and $69,600 in total winnings. He's an honored graduate and valedictorian. Quincy continues to make his community proud. So shout out to Quincy Howard from Georgia Tech, homegrown fellow here from Atlanta. And with that being said, thank you to our listening audience for tuning in. There's no me without you. So I greatly appreciate you each and every year in these 10 years of support that you have given me. Thank you to my guest today, Tammy Allen. I appreciate you. I enjoyed a lot of the talking points that you made. Very true. And so I
Thank you.
wish you all the best in your endeavors. And thank you to my producer, Penny, and the whole team at WCEG Network 2025. About to be in the books. Look forward to working with y'all in 2026. That's going to be it for the day and for the year for Conversation and Education. Until next time, I will see you in 2026. Peace and blessings.
That was fun.